On the decline. First tonight on Our News at 7, ERCA confirms that consumers can finally see a decline in their electricity bills beginning this month. Plus, the Commission of Corrections is seeking to have a parole system implemented in the Bahamas. He says it is all about accountability, incarceration or not. And later, submissions are open. After a brief pandemic hiatus, the highly anticipated Elevation Awards is back, and organizers need your nominees. And then in Our News at 7:30, after overwhelming support for a strike vote by BPL workers, negotiations are said to be progressing. We've got the details as Our News Live at 7 starts now. Welcome to Our News Live at 7. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Megan Shepard. Bahamas Power and Light telling the Utilities Regulations and Competition Authority that fuel charges have reached their peak and will decline moving forward. A statement from ERCA says the company has confirmed the decline will begin this month for many consumers and will be reflected in October's electricity bill. Back in October 2022, Prime Minister Philip Davis announced that the increase to the fuel surcharge was on the way. The utilities company says the glide path strategy was designed to slowly increase the fuel charge to a peak this summer and then decrease the fuel charge continuously through the end of February 2024. And by March, BPL is expected to have paid off its outstanding fuel debt. ERCA also noted an increasing number of complaints from customers about high power bills and, as a result, says it has been monitoring the situation. A review of those bills revealed some consumers' consumption doubled due to the increased demand during the summer months. From one vexing issue to another, crime. This time, a late-night shooting landing a 49-year-old man in hospital. Police say the gunfire erupted at a Haitian village off Joe Farrington Road around 10 p.m. The victim was buying food from a food vendor within the Haitian community when he was approached by two men who pulled out guns and started shooting. The 49-year-old, who was shot in the arm, was taken to the hospital in a private car where his condition is listed as stable. Police are still searching for the suspects in the case. A man who has spent 6 years behind bars is awaiting sentencing for a second murder conviction. 32-year-old Mark McKinsey appeared before Justice Franklin Williams today for a sentencing hearing. In May, McKinsey was convicted of the January 17, 2017 murder of Carlos Adderley. A gunman alleged to be McKinsey shot Adderley multiple times while he was at a basketball court near a church in Blue Hill Estates. Prosecutors are seeking a sentence in the range of 40 to 50 years. McKinsey is serving a 40-year sentence for the February 12, 2017 murder of Leslie Green. He was shot dead at Derby Road in Yellow Elder Gardens. McKinsey will learn his fate on October 12. We need to rethink the structure of inmates' journey through corrections and implement the system of parole in the Bahamas. That's according to Acting Commissioner of Corrections Don Clare. He says the new structure would take inmates through a series of steps, including classification, designing sentencing plans, programming, and tracking progress through case management. Finally comes re-entry.
We are now preparing you now to come out. If you don't have a driver's license, we provide one for you. If you don't have a passport, we try to assist you. If you don't have a job, we try to assist you. This is what the re-entry is for. And folks, this is coming to the institution. It has to come. Because you cannot do parole without it. So, now, once re-entry is finished with you, we then now turn you over to the parole in-house parole unit. And this in-house parole unit will make sure, do a dossier on you and present you to the parole board, which is an independent body. The parole board will then say yes or no. Dawn Clare can come out.
Clare says with the introduction of parole, inmates will be held accountable for their behavior for the entirety of their sentencing, even if they're no longer incarcerated.
Going forward, when the justice give you 30 years, 30 years is 30 years. And once you spend about 70% of that time at the institution being reformed, then that remaining 10 years, the parole board can say, okay, we can let you out with 10 years. But if you screw up once, if we test you once and you're on marijuana, you can spend those 10 years back in the institution. That's how good parole is. It makes you accountable. Because the current system right now, you are not accountable.
It's now time for your first look at temperatures. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is standing by in the Weather Center. Greg.
And a happy Thursday evening, everybody. Another beautiful day around the island. It's a little on the warm side, and it is still warm outside our studios right now. Temperatures currently in the mid to upper 80s, 86 with a few clouds. Your winds are out of the north-northwest at 10 miles per hour, and your feels-like temperature is very warm, 94 degrees. It is now 85 in Freeport, 85 in Marsh Harbor, Abaco. We pick up a pair of 87s in Alistown, Bimini, and in Nicholstown, Andros. Great Harbor Key, 86. Over in Governor's Harbor, you guys are 85. Central Bahamas, 86 is in, well, just one location, Kemps Bay. Arthurstown, Cat Island, 84. 85 is in Georgetown, Deadman's Key, and in Coburn Downs, San Salvador. And in the southeast Bahamas, temperatures in the mid-80s there. 86 in Duncantown, Ragged Island, and in Providenciales. 84 is Colonel Cricket Island, Abrahams Bay, and a pair of 85s, Electable Bay and Matthew Town in Nagua. You guys are currently at 85. Well, we are still tracking Lee. Lee is still a hurricane, still moving slowly towards the north. It's going to move just to the west of Bermuda over the next couple of, day or two. And eventually it should be moving to the north and away from Bermuda, moving into the Canadian Maritimes. Still as a hurricane, it's a rather weak one, but it's still going to be rather strong. The system is kind of broad, so it's going to be affecting quite a bit of the areas up there. In the meantime, though, a weak ridge of high pressure continues to dominate our weather, and that's going to continue to provide us with beautiful conditions throughout the rest of the week and into the weekend. And of course, your winds will fall off light. We still have some swells from Lee, but those swells will be subsiding as the weekend approaches. That's your first look at weather. Stick with us to look at your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on our news, the president of Botswana inspiring UB students. Hear his message on unbiased independent education. Plus, we take you inside the Center for Autism. Find out how the educational institution has been making meaningful impacts over the past 2 decades. When our news returns.
From inside what was once a lagoon.
So imagine that it is 80,000 years ago.
Nice.
And what it would have been like.
To kayaking.
Okay. Shallow. Don't worry about me. I'm turning around.
To learning about those things that scare us.
Okay. So you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. Just those trees there, right there.
Come join us on the record for a lesson in conservation and exploration inside the Bahamas National Trust Parks.
Parliament is prorogued, ending the first legislative session of the Davis administration. It's been 2 years since the PLP-1 elections, ushering in a new government. On October 4th, a brand new session of Parliament begins with a new Governor General, a new speech from the throne, and with it, a blueprint for a new legislative agenda. Stay with Our News Nightly and follow ournews.bs for analysis and insight, and most of all, what's important to you.
University and high school students were treated to a special lecture as the president of Botswana, Dr. Mogwitsi Masisi, stopped by to give a distinguished lecture on democratic values. In his message, Masisi encouraged the teaching and development of democracy in both nations.
The small nation states, Botswana and the Bahamas, both pursue foreign policies based on democratic values, where voices of small and big states can and should be heard. We continue to engage in dialogue at multilateral level in order to build a common understanding and strategies critical in addressing today's geopolitical issues, particularly those bordering on peace and security, equality, sustainable development, and respect for human rights.
Masisi also highlighting the importance of unbiased, independent education, specifically at the tertiary level.
Since we are at an institution of higher learning, the University of the Bahamas, you must also insist on the independence of academic institutions from propaganda. Universities thrive and play their roles as change bearers and powerhouses of ideas, of innovation and transformation, to the extent that their national governments support the principle of academic freedom and the pursuit of the truth and excellence.
For more than 2 decades, the Center for Autism at Garventines Primary School has been meeting the needs of children in New Providence living with autism. The students, ages 5 through 12 years old, are taught by specialized educators and even have weekly visits from a speech pathologist to ensure they're on the right track to thriving in society. Team leader at the Center for Autism, Lionel Flores.
It helps the children to kind of meet their needs. Now, we have a long way to go. We're not there, but we're on the right track in making sure that we meet the needs. We still need more resources, but we're doing the best with what we have. So ultimately, these children now have a pathway, and they also now can look at, okay, if the academic route isn't for me, then I may have another opportunity with a trade or a skill. So we're right now is just laying the groundwork so that they could be able to kind of still function in society.
And he says after enrolling in the Center for Autism, there's a noticeable improvement in the students.
We've had numerous success stories. Last year in particular, we've had about 9 students graduate, and they're now in junior high school, so they're thriving, they're doing well. We have a student that came up who's actually working in the unit right now. His name is Baron. He basically does most of the cleaning, and he's learned that skill from the unit, and now, you know what I mean, he's able to function and make money on his own.
We'll have much more on the autism unit at Garventines Primary in tomorrow's newscast. When our news comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as the North Korean leader lends his support to the Russian president. Find out why. Plus, a tragic update for that missing Canadian medical student in Grenada. And in this week's Sustainability First report, our Marlena Leonard tells us how insurance companies plan to make a difference in the fight against climate change. These stories and more when our news returns.
Embrace technology and the digital transformation for better business results. For small business owners, it's essential to understand how technology can affect operational efficiencies. Modern communication relies on technology, and your customer service depends on communication. With proper tools like our fixed and mobile services, we help you stay connected. For solutions that work, ask the experts. Call Cable Bahamas Business Solutions.
Don't spend hours sending individual messages to your customers. Use SMS messaging instead. With Cable Bahamas Business Solutions SMS messaging, you can send personalized messages to hundreds or even thousands of recipients instantly. It's quick, effortless, and cost-effective. Plus, it ensures that your messages are delivered directly to your customers' cellular phones, guaranteeing higher engagement. Save time and boost your outreach with SMS bulk messaging. Call Cable Bahamas Business Solutions at 601-8911 in Nassau or 602-8811 in the Family Islands.
In what we do at Best Brew, it really doesn't end when the customer purchases our product. We offer specialty coffee, tea, spices, and brewing equipment. We do a lot of our orders via website. We actually have the mobile service and the phone service and the internet. So having Business in a Box really kind of brought everything together for us and helps us to be able to provide the customer services that we pride ourselves on.
This is Our News. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. Libya is racing to bury its dead as bodies pile up in the streets of northern coastal city devastated by flooding. Libyan authorities fear 20,000 people are dead. Morgues are full and hospitals remain out of service. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk expressed sorrow for the lives lost in Libya.
I'm profoundly distressed that thousands of lives have been so brutally swept away in eastern Libya. And so many more people have lost their loved ones, their homes, their communities, and their access to basic needs. Storm Daniel is yet another lethal reminder of the catastrophic impact that the changing climate can have on our world. I call on all Libyan political actors to overcome deadlocks and divisions and to act collectively in ensuring access to relief. This is a time for unity of purpose. All those affected must receive support without regard for any affiliations. It is important that particular care is taken to ensure protection of groups in vulnerable situations who are rendered even more at risk in the aftermath of such a disaster. Human rights need to be at the center of the response to this heartbreaking situation. We need to invest in prevention and resilience. I stand in solidarity with the people of Libya with my deepest heartfelt condolences to those who are mourning irreplaceable losses.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un told Russian President Vladimir Putin that he supports Russia's sacred war against Western imperialism as Kim made a rare trip overseas to Russia's east for a meeting that's being closely watched by U.S. officials and allies over concerns of a potential arms deal. Edward Barron reports.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un expressed his support for what he called Moscow's sacred fight against Western imperialism as he met Russian President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday. The pair exchanged a long handshake and warm greetings outside the Vostochny Cosmodrome, Russia's most modern space rocket launch facility located in the country's east. At the opening of their meeting, Kim spoke of his country's unwavering position to further develop its friendship and ties with Moscow.
Russia is now in the sacred fight against hegemonic forces to protect its sovereignty and security interests. We have constantly expressed our full and unconditional support for all the decisions taken by the President and Russian leadership. And I want to assure you that we will always be together with Russia in the fight against imperialism.
Putin showed Kim around the Cosmodrome, including the building where Russia's latest space booster is assembled. Earlier, when asked by reporters if Russia would help Kim build satellites, Putin said, quote, "That's why we came here." North Korea failed twice to launch reconnaissance satellites in the past 4 months, but the US has warned that an arms trade could be on the table. Kim's delegation includes top defense industry and military officials, a sign analysts say suggests an agenda heavy on defense industry cooperation. Washington and allies are concerned that Pyongyang will supply weapons to Moscow to aid its invasion in Ukraine, though both countries have denied such intentions. Meanwhile, just an hour before the highly anticipated meeting, North Korea launched 2 short-range ballistic missiles, according to South Korean and Japanese authorities. Analysts say it was the first launch by the North while Kim was abroad, and it could imply that Pyongyang is adopting an increasing level of delegation and more refined control systems for its nuclear and missile programs.
U.S. Senator and former presidential hopeful Mitt Romney has called for Donald Trump and Joe Biden to stand aside. Romney is urging the pair to make room for a new generation of politicians. The remarks came while speaking to the media about his own plans to retire. Romney says he's choosing not to run again because it was time for a new generation of leaders. The 76-year-old has had a 20-year career in U.S. politics, including a 5-year stint as governor of Massachusetts. He will remain in office until the end of his Senate term in January 2025. A Canadian medical student who went missing last week in Grenada has been found dead. According to a release from the Grenada Police Force, Liam Fisher, a 35-year-old Canadian citizen, was last seen on Saturday, September 9th, while attending the Grenada Hash House Harriers run. Police said Fisher was studying medicine at St. George's University. In a follow-up statement on September 12th, officials said the body of a man was discovered in Marion, St. George that evening. On Instagram, Fisher's loved ones posted a statement stating they were completely devastated by the loss of their beautiful son, Liam Fisher. St. George's University also posted a tribute to Fisher on its Instagram story. It remains unclear the circumstances of the Canadian man's death. Haiti's government announced that it met with Dominican officials in the Dominican Republic to talk about a recent threat by that country's president to close all borders in response to a row over the construction of a supposed canal. The brief statement by Haiti's Ministry of Foreign Affairs did not provide much detail, except to say that both sides were trying to find a fair and definitive solution. The issue? The use of the Massacre River that runs along the border both countries share on the island of Hispaniola. Tensions between Haiti and the Dominican Republic deepened. Dominican officials announced that they had suspended issuing visas to Haitians and threatened to shut down land, air, and sea traffic if the conflict over the canal was not resolved this week. This afternoon, insurance companies from around the country met to talk climate change and how insurance may be a tool. In tonight's Sustainability First, our Marlena Leonard talks about the connection.
Bahamas First, putting sustainability first for our people and our environment. What's first for you and the planet comes first for us.
Group President and CEO of Bahamas First, Patrick Ward, tells us the insurance industry has definitely felt the heat from climate change.
We saw this in Hurricane Dorian and the impact it had in Abaco and Grand Bahama in particular, where a storm at a Category 5 level hovered over those areas for quite a significant amount of time.
Today's climate change luncheon presented by the Bahamas Insurance Association was also sponsored by Bahamas First. It drew in attendees from across the industry, as well as a climate expert who discussed a series of possible ways insurance could help shape the way the country navigates climate change.
We can add value to that conversation because we have the data to show what's taken place and how certain things have held up, whether it's a roof system, a window type, and even the zoning. The conversation should involve the insurance sector as well.
And could incentives be on the way for people who choose to make climate-conscious decisions for their properties, like raised foundations and solar panels?
I think most of the focus, unfortunately, has to be along the lines of building up around the concept of resilience, and then when we get to the point where it's sufficiently developed as a concept and we can implement plans that we know will have an impact.
Reporting for Our News and reminding you to put sustainability first, I'm Marlena Leonard.
Still to come in Our News, today in history. Find out interesting facts about the day that was September 14th. Plus, be sure to support your favorite creative as the Elevation Awards is back. It's all systems go for April 2024. And still to come in Our News at 7:30. We hear from the most decorated female parliamentarian sitting at the cabinet table. Our Sasha Lightbourne has a one-on-one with Glenys Hannah Martin. That's coming up when Our News returns.
From inside what was once a lagoon.
So imagine that it is 80,000 years ago.
Nice.
And what it would have been like.
To kayaking.
Okay. Shallow. Don't worry about me. I'm turning around.
To learning about those things that scare us.
Okay. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. Just throw the squeeze there, right there.
Come join us on the record for a lesson in conservation and exploration inside the Bahamas National Trust Parks.
Parliament is prorogued, ending the first legislative session of the Davis administration. It's been 2 years since the PLP-1 elections, ushering in a new government. On October 4th, a brand new session of Parliament begins with a new Governor General, a new speech from the throne, and with it, a blueprint for a new legislative agenda. Stay with Our News Nightly and follow ournews.bs for analysis and insight, and most of all, what's important to you.
technology and the digital transformation for better business results. For small business owners, it's essential to understand how technology can affect operational efficiencies. Modern communication relies on technology and
Welcome back to Our News. It's now time to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was September 14th. Let's take a look.
On this day in Bahamian history, in 1949, Jackson Logan Burnside III was born in Nassau. Burnside was an artist, architect, junkaneur, teacher, and musician. He was a member of the Saxon Superstars before helping to found One Family Junkanoo Group in 1993. He also founded Dunkalik Studios Art Gallery. Burnside died on May 11, 2011. He was 62 years old. In 1999, Hurricane Floyd impacted the central and northwest Bahamas as a Category 4 hurricane. Floyd affected mainly the islands of Abaco, Eleuthera, Cat Island, and San Salvador. On Eleuthera, the glass window bridge was destroyed and had to be rebuilt. One death was recorded on the island of Grand Bahama after a person drowned in Freeport. In 2020, New Providence saw 24 times the amount of COVID-19 cases in a second wave of the virus than it did in the first. According to Chief Medical Officer Dr. Pearl McMillan, of the 2,974 confirmed cases, 130 were children and adolescents, while nearly half of the positive cases were people between ages 20 and 39. And finally, in 2022, was a dramatic return from summer break for the House of Assembly, as crowds demonstrated a number of issues outside Parliament.
We spoke to protesters to try to get clarification on what exactly it was they were protesting, with Faith Percenti telling us it's not about who organized the event.
We don't hate anyone. All we're saying is that if you go into any other country, they ensure that their citizens are taken care of.
Dave Horton, a healthcare worker, shared his views, saying his issue is not the idea of foreigners working in the Bahamas.
I'm not going to be naive. We need foreigners in the country to help us in things we need to do. They have been helping us. But I'm going to say today, we don't need to instill where foreigners can have it better than Bahamian in their own home.
But protesters found out the bill in question wouldn't be tabled today when the leader of the opposition, Michael Pintard, came over and spoke to the crowd briefly to mixed reactions.
The Elevation Awards is back. Organizers say people have been asking for a comeback, including local entertainers. Like many other events, it took a break during the COVID-19 pandemic. Producer Travis Edgecombe says submissions are now open for the event scheduled for April 2024.
We heard the cries of the people that were in the industry that wanted to know what was going on with it, and we decided to bring the Elevation Awards back. We understand that during the pandemic, we weren't able to be as active as we were, but like everybody's been saying, we outside. So now we are bringing it back. Submissions are open for anyone that is an entertainer, whether it's music, radio personality, a music director, producer, you're an artist. We have 3 to 4 public voting categories that we're going to be bringing forward.
Submissions close on December 1st, and the nominees will be announced in January 2024. To submit, visit encoremedia.com/submissions. The Elevation Awards is an entertainment award show highlighting local creatives in the industry. Edgecombe says the show builds industry, adding local entertainers are already looking forward to the event.
Some good music has been released between 2021 and 2023. That's a lot of music to be released in that time space. So I've already been in the process of talking with a few of the top artists that we have out now, asking them to perform, and they've accepted. They are excited. The musicians are ready to go. We're already in the planning stages of making this show to be memorable for 2024.
Now to watch that story again and for all of today's top stories, visit ournews.bs. That does it for Our News at 7. Joining us now is our Jamila Mizik with the latest headlines. Jamila.
Thanks, Megan. Things may be looking up for frustrated employees at the country's power giant as negotiations are progressing, and our Women in Power series continues tonight. Here are your latest headlines.